Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Static Echoes. Tonight we're just going to have a little bit of a general chat on all things high strangeness in and around Australia. And I got my mate with me, and you'll all know him. He's been on the show a couple of times already, and we all like him. So say hello to Ray. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. How you going?
Not bad, not bad. Can't complain. Lots going on out and about, but I think we're going to just chat all about Australia tonight because there's a lot happening around.
And we have, and we haven't even scratched the surface of it, really. I mean, with that much going on in this country, you have to go out and about and find it. But, tell the listeners, I'm actually not with you through the
No. He's not sat on my knee.
Modern technology.
I'm in the southwest. Yes, I'm in the southwest of Australia, and Ray is up in the northeast side of Australia. So
beautiful Brisbane, the Olympic city.
3,000 miles or whatever it is?
I don't know.
3,000 kilometres?
I have no idea. I just know it's a long way. Just know it's a really long way.
It's about a 5-hour plane flight.
That's to Perth.
Thereabouts. Yeah.
And then you've got to get to your place, which I don't know how long that would be, but it'd be a while. Me to go to New Zealand.
Yeah, it's quicker for me to go to Bali.
Well, I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
It's only 3 hours away.
But now, as you said, high strangeness in Australia, and believe me, we've got enough of it, and we've got enough of it at any time, and particularly in our history, and even now, even today. And I think there's plenty we can cover and plenty we can talk about. But, the thing is, what I'm amazed at the moment, just looking on social media, and particularly the one group that I'm a member of, which is called the Brisbane UFO group. And I would be interested to hear any people that are members of any similar groups in other cities as to whether or not we're seeing an explosion. It's just increasing every month, every week almost, it seems like, of UAP UFO sightings. Have you noticed that in any of the groups that you're in over in your side of the country?
Yeah. There's a lot of it happening. And I mean, I'll go out and about and we do Skywatch nights ourselves, but I have noticed there's a lot more chatter going around and getting away from Australia for one split second. I don't know if it's anything to do with 3i Atlas, which is hurtling towards us or not, but I definitely do think there seems to be a lot going on in and around the Australian skies at the moment.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I just can't believe I've been looking through the group the other day, and every day there seems to be a new video from somebody somewhere in southeast Queensland who's seen something. And maybe the one thing with 3i Atlas, it's gotten us to look up a lot more.
Yes,
definitely. We talk about that as people may or may not know. I'm a freelance writer and journalist, author, as well as a fairly well-known cryptozoologist. And we found that with, like, for example, with Yowie research. The more you look up, the more you realize they use trees and sit in trees and live in trees. And same thing with UAPs, UFOs. We've got to look up more and look up into the sky more. And oddly enough, we're going to see it. Now, unfortunately, Elon Musk has copped a fair bit of blame for a lot of these UAP sightings in terms of when they roll out Starlink at 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. But it's certainly, it's certainly increasing at a rate of knots, and not just Australia. I've seen from all over the world, videos coming in from people's phones, and because smartphones are getting better, the videos are getting better. But some of the things I've seen here is on the videos is just absolutely mind-blowing. There was one guy who posted a video he took the other day from, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, he took the video from Kangaroo Point. Now, for people who don't know Brisbane, Kangaroo Point is in the city. Like, it's right in the city. It's in the middle of the city. And this guy's on a balcony of an apartment, so I can't remember which direction he was looking at. Now, there is a flight path. It's straight. Mostly it goes, from the south. They either come up from the south or they come up south, turn west, and come in from the west. But these were in the east, and they just looked like there was two white balls and then a big orange one. And just sitting in the east, hard to gauge from the video how far away they were from him, but they were sizable, and they weren't aircraft moving towards you. So we're seeing that. And then last year we had a big rash in the western suburbs of what would be best shaped as like a bell shape, like a church bell, and it hung
That's
around for a
interesting.
few days. So
That
it's
sounds
just
very similar to the old Kecksburg case, because there was the Kecksburg Bell case, it's not very often you hear about that one.
Kecksburg. That's an American one, right?
Yes, it is, but it's the first time I've heard a report saying it's a bell shape since that report. So that's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, it was just what it looked like to me. I mean, they weren't saying it was a bell, but it just looked like it to me. And look, people are seeing them all over the place. There was another report tonight that I even looked tonight that I can't remember exactly where in the city in Brisbane they were. I think he was in the sort of inner north, looking north, and the fellow reported seeing probably 10 of them just circling each other, not satellites, not aircraft, not helicopters, not drones. They're sort of almost sort of chasing each other in the sky, so to speak, circling each other, weaving in and out of each other. And some other people from the Sunshine Coast, which from there away is probably 80 kilometres, 70, 80 kilometres, they were reporting seeing it in the south as well. So there was multiple people seeing this at the same time. And, I think back to when we did the Three Eye Atlas podcast, and I think back to that interview that Ross Coulthard did with Dr. Villarom. I can't remember her name, Villaroli, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And because I don't have the notes in front of me. And, with her field of studying the old films of the old glass plate films from the Palomar Observatory. And when they were looking, and this is looking at the pre-satellite era, so pre-1957, when there would be nothing in orbit, and seeing all those thousands upon thousands of metallic reflective technological pieces in the sky is what they called them. And it gets me back to the sightings that appear in our newspaper. If you go to trove.nla.gov.au, you can search strange lights in the sky and it'll bring up thousands of newspaper articles ranging back from the 1880s all the way up to the 1940s and the 1950s. And they report of UFOs, and I can only imagine what people thought in those days when there was nothing in the sky that could explain it. And this is the thing that authorities are going to have a really hard time explaining. It's easy to say since 1957, you see something in the sky. It's a satellite. It's an aircraft. It's a helicopter. It's Starlink. It's a drone, possibly. And it's all very easy to say that. But what answer do you have for pre-1957?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't have a clue that far back, but just to give you a little bit of insight, one of my best friends years ago, his dad he worked at the Perth airport on the ground control, his ground crew, and he knew that I was into it even way back then, and he actually would quite often come and talk to me, and he said, you would not believe how often there are unidentified, he called them unidentified objects in the skies above Perth, because quite often in the tower they would get radar blips and things come up and they couldn't see them, so they would radio out to the ground crew to see if they could see anything in the skies from where they were, taking out the reflectiveness from the windows and things like that. And he actually said to me, you would not believe how many reports there are every night, every day, and every week. He said it's not a rare thing at all. There would be at least 3 or 4 a night, and this is in Perth, and this was back in the 80s and the 90s. So yeah, there would have been a few satellites, but satellites aren't going to pick up on your on the ground radar and stuff like that. I mean,
No.
I asked him how far down the radar would come, and he said it was calibrated so that it was just high enough that the trucks on the Tonkin Highway wouldn't pick it off, because when they first calibrated it, they were actually picking up the tall trucks going through, the semis and the road trains and things like that. So they had to calibrate it up a bit higher. And yeah, so it's getting stuff from ground level up now. Obviously, you need something of a fairly decent size to actually ping on it.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how good they are now, but Yeah, he was saying several every night. And I don't know if it's just with the internet, because obviously this was sort of, the internet was around, but it wasn't really a big thing back then. It was only just starting to come into its infancy when Yahoo was the big thing. It was even before Google.
Mm.
And what's interesting is this is a man that is not interested in anything paranormal, nothing UAP or UFO back then.
Yeah.
He wasn't interested in anything like that, but he would tell me about all of these reports. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, so
his wife was very religious.
Yeah.
So he had to sort of take me to one side and tell me about all of this. So I put a lot of credibility into what he had to say.
Well, look, you know, the momentum for this is building to the point where very shortly, and don't ask me how long very shortly is, but it's building up to such a momentum that the governments of the world are not going to have much choice very longer. And
no.
I think that there may be forces that are trying to force their hand, and the question is how we're going to react to it. You know, like you said the other night when we were doing our podcast on 3i Atlas, you know, actually, no, you didn't say that. You said just in your update the other day, all of our cameras, all of our telescopes, everything's trained towards 3i Atlas. It's all trained
Correct.
towards, I think it's in Sagittarius, I think, in the constellation of Sagittarius. But
yeah,
no one's watching our back. Yeah, everything's pointed forward, but nothing's watching our back. So you basically, like you said, like, you know, what's the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And I think,
no, I didn't say that.
No. I mean, said, that was my inference. I'm saying is that.
Yeah, no. What I was getting from that.
You know, with the left hand. Yeah. Sorry, I misread it. It is like
what I was trying to say is a magician will make you focus on the left hand, so everybody's watching that, and the trick that he is doing is in the right hand. So we don't 100% know what might be happening. If that is the case, we are all looking to see the magic happening when it's actually happening on the other side, what we're not looking at.
I will say this, though. A lot of people online with a lot of other content creators and a lot of other podcasters are asking some very, very, very good questions. I just got a notification of another channel I follow, and it said, 3i Atlas, why is NASA so silent? Because NASA took, a month to release the images from the James Webb and from the other telescope as well, to show that it's projecting a massive coma that is half the size of the sun, but yet it's missing all the normal things that you would expect to see a normal comet. So, you know, as you say, our attention is drawn towards this. So there's no one's really watching the back door, so to speak, and to see if anything comes in. And as I said to you before, I think that maybe there are forces here on Earth that are going to try to force world governments of the world's hands. I mean, the way, like, for example, when you hear Donald Trump talk about it, he just downplays it and dismisses it. Come on, we're not idiots.
Yep.
We're not stupid.
No.
You know, you can't say, I reckon since the first UFO sighting, whenever exactly that was, because we know that goes back into an antiquity now, there's probably been hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have seen these things up close, from a distance, whatever, in an airplane, whatever it may be. You can't say they're all lunatics. You can't say they're all nutcases. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. And as I say to some other people about Yowie reports in the past, before photographic and radar evidence, a person's testimony, and it still is today, is enough to give someone the death sentence.
Yeah.
Witness report is still enough to put someone away for life in jail. So why can't they take thousands, if not millions of reports of whether it's Yowies or whether it's UFOs as actual credible witness accounts, instead of dismissing them? Oh, they're a nutcase, or they're a drinker, or they've been smoking weed, or whatever. Yes, those things will affect your perception. But, I mean, the weight of evidence, the weight of witness reports alone, what Dr. Stephen Greer has done with the Disclosure Project, and we're seeing people coming forward more and more and more and more, people that, you know, have been vetted, that have worked in the military industrial complex, not only in America, but in the UK, and people that have had sightings here. I mean, let's talk about Westfall for a sec. How many people? How many witnesses saw the incident at Westfall in the 60s? Was it 60s, wasn't it? Yeah, 60s, I think, Westfall. I mean,
Westfall in the 60s. Yeah, there was mid 60s. Yeah.
I mean, how many people saw it?
Well, there were teachers. There were 60s. The students.
Yeah, exactly. The thing parked in the oval of the school.
Yeah. There was two objects. One landed and the other one hovered above it. And what's interesting is that the next day at the school, they were visited by military and basically told not to talk about it. But you know what the funny part about it was?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the Australian military. It was the United States military.
Well, I got another story that can back that up a bit. And I'll tell you what it is. There's a book that was written, and I only saw it in the early 90s briefly because someone I knew had it, and it was like one of those pocket paperback sizes.
Yep.
And it was called The Incident at Greenbank. And the Greenbank incident, Greenbank is an outer southwestern suburb of Brisbane. Back in those days, in the early to mid 70s, it was all bush, just bush and farms. Yep. That's all it was. Now it's all suburb and residential, but back then it was all bush, just nothing but bush and farms. And the story goes from memory, because I only read the book once in the early mid 90s. Can't even tell you who wrote it. And if you do a Google search, for some reason it doesn't come up. It's an old book. So if you can ever grab hold of that, it's really worth reading. From memory, so there's a farm with not a pond, but not really a dam, not a huge dam, but a pond where livestock drank from, and it was close to the house. And this was one night. I can't remember, couldn't even tell you what time of year it was, but there was basically this farming family that lived on the farm. They heard an explosion outside in the middle of the night. They went out there. I don't know, can't remember what they saw or anything like that because it was pitch black. When they woke up at dawn the next morning, there was metallic debris all over the field, and it was just debris. There was no object per se, but there was just this hundreds and hundreds of kilograms worth of metal, just fragmented, twisted. It's just like something exploded in the sky, and it all just rained down on their farm. And
so it wasn't like any kind of skeletal structure to this.
No
object. It was just
I can't really remember. No. But what happened was, and this was in I think the early or mid 70s in the outer southwest of Brisbane. But the family who did really reluctant to talk about told the author that it was a metal, it was extremely light, and it was honeycombed in the middle.
Okay, that sounds ahead of its time.
It does, but it also who knows. But it's what really is really strange about this is that they said that about 6 trucks turned up. Now, I will say Greenbank is not far as the crow flies from Amberley Air Force Base, which is an RAAF base. At a guess, in a straight line, maybe 40, 50 Ks, not that far.
Yeah.
And from memory, I'm just trying to think as we speak, they said it was metallic, they said it was honeycomb, and then they said about these 5 or 6 trucks turned up, dark green trucks. And all they had was 1 star on the side of each side. And these blokes hopped out, and the Americans hopped out with Australian Air Force. And they told them, I can't remember, what did the book say? It said, this is just something from the Air Force Base and we're here to collect it all. And before by the afternoon, when they turned up about 8 o'clock in the morning, by the afternoon the whole place was picked clean.
Yeah.
I actually found the farm back in the mid-90s. I went looking for it and I found the farm, and a lot of the land had been sold off by that stage, but I found the farmhouse because there's a picture of the farmhouse in the book. And by that stage, a lot of the family who were older had passed on, and they've all moved around. And I believe there was only one family member, a male in Brisbane. I can't even remember the family name. And I tracked him down on the phone and I rang him and I said, I'm just talking when I talk to you about the book. There's a rumor around that suggested that perhaps you have a piece of that metal still. hung up on me. Wouldn't ever take my call ever
he
again.
wouldn't want anybody knowing that, would he?
No, but he didn't confirm nor deny it. And it said it was only a rumor. But
Yeah.
again, the book says that they were Americans that turned up. So if anyone's read that book or has that book or knows where I can get it, I'd love to get another copy of it and reread it, because it was 30 years ago when I read it. It's worth digging into again.
Yeah, so if anybody has heard of the book or has a copy of the book or knows where we can get a copy, please let us know in the comments and we will be right on top of that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it would be worth a read, because there's no suggestion that it's alien. There's no suggestion of ETs, but it could even very well been an aircraft, like it could have been like in mid-70s. So what, in development? Well, no, by the mid-70s, they had fully functioning F-14 Tomcats, which were all on carriers, I think. But I mean, it could have been an aircraft wing. Aren't some aircraft wings honeycombed in the middle, made of aluminium and honeycombed in the middle? Or are they? No, they're not really, are they? They've got those sort of struts in them that run horizontally.
So they're not really what you would call honeycomb. They've got holes basically drilled out of them, for lack of a better term, so like an I-beam, they work out where the stress points are and they cover those off so that they're keeping it as light as they can and as flexible as they can.
Yeah.
For obviously what the plane has to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, nobody has any clue as to what it was. But like you say, this is another case. So that's to back, I only tell you the story to back up your case, what you said about those people and the US military turning up, and which is, according to the book, the same thing that happened in this case. So I don't know if it's true or not. It was before my time, but
to move on from that, I mean, obviously, there's a guy that we all know by the name of Ross Coulthart. He actually did a Channel 7 special on UFOs and stuff like that, and part of the story was actually based over here in WA, out near Broome and everything, where you got that big US radar station and everything out there. And this was set back when the girls used to go out partying and stuff, and they would always go up close to the Air Force Base to try and get the guys smiling and stuff like that. Anyway, there was this one time when they went up there and this car broke down and one of the patrols came past and there was the two US guys in it. It's like a Jeep kind of thing. And they said, look, we're broken down. Any chance we can get a lift back into town? And they radioed it in and they were told they were allowed to take them back into town because they didn't want them obviously up near the base. On the way back, they witnessed something in the sky which blew them all away. And basically, I think it's a classic case of that, by the men in black or the military people come and sort of say a few things. These two Americans suddenly disappeared. They were off base, never seen or heard from again. And the girls were the only ones to tell the story. And I think only one of them actually spoke out on the Ross Coulthart special. And it's definitely worth a watch for anybody who's interested in this kind of thing, because it's all based in and around Australia. So there's a lot going on in our skies, and it's not just people like us talking about it. There are big name people talking about it as well as the average Joe.
The funny thing is, I was talking to someone the other day because, as you know, as I said, I'm heavily into Yowie research, and when I'm not working six days a week. And, I was commenting on how there's been no sort of published work that's been going on lately. And, not many people are going out there posting their videos or writing papers like I used to do about, what we would find. No one's producing any new books or videos or audio recordings or just straight out putting their work up. But, people say, when you tell people that you've seen UFOs, that you've seen Yowies, that you've seen apparitions all appear in front of you, they think you're just making it up. But the reality is, if you get out there, if you put yourself out there and open yourself up to see these things, to investigate, to have an inquiring mind, not only will you find them, but they will also find you. I don't know if it's a vibrational thing, like a mental frequency thing, but for some reason when an old friend of mine, Glennis Mackay, used to say that the mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. You can't go out there with this. You can't go out there with this bravado. Oh, just prove to me it's all bullshit. You've got to go out there with an open mind, wanting to see something. But then there's also a situation where you can have too much of an open mind where you convince yourself that everything is either every noise is a Yowie or every light in the sky is a UFO or every gust of wind is an apparition appearing to you, standing behind you, wanting to suck your soul out of your body. I mean, people also talk themselves into it. There's a saying in the cryptozoology field in Australia called Yowie brain or Yowie on the brain. When you think everything is Yowie related. And I will admit, when I first started, I went through that bit. I went through that as well, where you think everything is Yowie related. Oh, there's a twisted piece of grass. It must be a Yowie who did that. Or there's a broken stick sitting 25 feet high in the tree. Yeah, Yowie put that there. Oh, well, there's a hole in the ground. Yeah, Yowie dug it. And so I would imagine, is there something similar for UFOs, UAPs, and ghost hunters? Because you've done more than that than I have.
100%. Now, I've been trying to mentor a young fella who's wanting to start his own group up. He's only just started getting into paranormal research just recently, and one of the big things, and I noticed, as like what you were saying, anybody who's new to the field talk about orbs. Orbs everywhere. Now, anybody who's a photographer knows straight away 99% of orbs are 100% easily written off as dust, moisture, insects, you name it. I said the only way you could look at it and tell me that it's something realistic is if it's self-illuminating and it casts light on objects around it, because that then puts it in three-dimensional space. It's not just a piece of moisture or a bit of dust floating across the lens as the flash is going off. So yes, there is something like that. And it's the same with UFOs as well, so that covers off both. But it's interesting how you just brought that up, because a video that we put out a couple of weeks ago on this channel as well was speaking to a truck driver by the name of Barry, who does a lot of driving through the Piliga. And he's had a lot of encounters out there, and he's a very genuine bloke. And he was very, very reluctant to come on air to talk about it, but he felt that it had been sort of stewing up inside him, all of these experiences that he'd had. So he actually came out and spoke to me live on air. Now, for the first couple of weeks, it didn't do much, but it's obviously hit a nerve somewhere, because that video has gone from about 200 views up to probably over 7,000 views inside a week.
Wow.
And what I found really interesting about that, more than listening to the conversation itself, is actually reading all of the comments, because there's well over a couple of hundred comments, and a lot of people commending him for coming out and telling his story. And then there's a lot of people that talk about the different kind of interactions that they've had and what they think Yowies are. And like you said, there's always those guys out there that just poo-poo him, you're talking shit, you're crazy and stuff like that. It's people like that that do stop genuine people from coming forward with their stories. So
yeah, and all the online skeptics that jump down their throat.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I did say is that in any paranormal or cryptozoological or ufological thing, 90% of objects and events can be easily spoken away. You'd be able to work out exactly what they are. You can debunk them. I said it's the 10% that are strange and unusual. I said, now, unless you're there, you can't tell whether he's in the 90% or he's in that 10%. You've got to take everybody on face value unless they've 100% proven themselves to be an absolute liar and stuff like that. And this guy does not come across like that. He was, if you listen to it, he is very genuine about what he had to say. And I do believe he had experiences out there. Obviously, because I wasn't there, I can't add any kind of support to what he actually had seen, or I can't offer any kind of idea as to what it might be. If it's a paranormal case, I could turn around and say, well, it could be this or it could be that. Can you discount this? But in these Yowie type situations, you'd be the person I would defer to. And it's just interesting when you brought that up about the naysayers and everything like that, because it's going to happen no matter what and no matter where. They always pop up.
One thing I say about these gutless skeptics is that they think they have an answer for everything. They think they think they know everything. They think that's all logical to them. It's very clear, but it's never clear. And if you can actually get the odd brave one, because every time you call them out, they won't come out. You say like, I'll take you out. Let's go have a look. I'll show you. No, I'm busy.
Yeah.
No, I got to work. No.
Yeah.
But I have this one funny story. I'll just quickly about Piliga. I'll just tell you this. My son, Nico, who came out with quite a few times with me, Yowie hunting with friends up on the Sunshine Coast. And as he's gotten older, when he was about 16, 17, and we had a funny incident up there that ever since that incident, he has sort of said, no, they're not real. No, they don't exist. So I'm 6'4", Nicholas is 6'7". And so anyway, Nicholas is a long-distance truck driver. And apparently in the Piliga, there's a truck stop that you just do not stop at, that you do not sleep at.
Barry spoke about this. It would be ready. I actually spoke to you the other week and I said he would love to have a chat with you. So I might arrange for the two of you guys to get in together, because he mentioned a truck stop that he would never stop at.
It's I don't know exactly. I know roughly where it is, but apparently no truck drivers at night will stop there at night. Just won't.
Yeah.
So my son, who's only just about to turn 31, this is when he first started driving long distance. He was about 20 or 27, so about 4 years ago. And he rang me and he said, guess where I am? And I said, where? He said, I'm at that truck stop. And it was about 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And being a boisterous, loud, smart-ass 27-year-old, he says, I said, what are you doing there? He says, I'm going to take a leak. And I said, no, don't get out of the truck. From the stories I've heard about that truck stop, do not get out of the truck. Well, he goes, nothing wrong, bro. Don't worry about it, bro. I'm going to go out to the truck stop. And he's taking a leak and he's yelling out, hey, Mr. Yowie, I'm peeing in your backyard. What are you going to do? I'm peeing in your backyard. Come get me. And I'm listening to us on the phone. I said, don't do it. And he's driving a big, B double. He was driving the dog and truck, I think it's called. I'm not familiar with what a lot of the truck terms are. And, it's got a big metal, carriage that they pull, with the, it's like a big rock truck this one carries organic stuff. Anyway, it was empty. And he's out there, the side of the truck, facing the bush, taunting Mr. Yowie. And as soon as he finishes, he goes, and this is a true story, he goes, see, bro, nothing here. And as he said that, you hear this big crack, like this big bang come through the phone. And he looks around and he says, what the F was that? And a gigantic rock had been thrown through the bush and hit the side of the truck. And he goes, yeah, well, I got to get on the road anyway. So I'll talk to you later.
Right there, that backs up some of what Barry had to say. So, when you hear it from more than one person, it does add to the case.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of strangeness in the Piliga. But, talking about these naysayers, I just reminded myself of one other really quick story. In about 1996, 97, I met this naysayer at a group talk we used to give on once a month on UFOs and all kinds of other paranormal and strangeness. And he said, oh, I'm not afraid of UFOs. I said, oh, okay. He said, yeah, they're not real. It's all bullshit. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. He said, you could take me anywhere you want. And, even if we see something, I'll have an explanation for it. I said, oh, is that right? He goes, yeah, he was talking tough. He wasn't a big guy. He was just a average size guy, a couple of years younger than me. He said, yeah, you take me out, I'll go anywhere. So, okay, let's go out tomorrow night. Let's go out tonight. I said, in fact, let's go out tonight after the talk. Let's go. He goes, yeah, okay, we'll go out. And he said, what are we going to do? I said, look, there's a due for a meteor shower and I want to try and, get some photos of the meteor shower and it's happening at the airport. So, we never never know what happens. We might get some action out there. Oh, yeah, I'll come. Mm-hmm. Nothing will happen, though. Nothing will happen. So we go to this point at this place on the opposite side of the river. So there's where the Brisbane airport is. There's a canal called Schultz Canal that runs through it, and then it runs out up past Nudgee and into the river. So we went to this section of sort of Nudgee area where it's dark and a lot of people go fishing, and it was middle of winter, which I always thought was a good time. And we thought we'd go out, and there's up past this canal. And anyway, so we're sitting there, and the meteor shower started, and I'm trying to take some photos, and I'm not having much luck. And then we see this light appear, and it appears inland over the canal, right? And it's about, I don't know, 100 meters off the ground. And there's no sound. We can't hear any sound. It's a little bit windy. We can't hear any sound. And I said to him, look at that light. What's that? And he just goes, where? And I said, that light there. And he goes, oh, I don't know. And I said, it's coming closer. And he goes, yeah, it's coming closer. And then we saw like a searchlight come out from underneath it. And it wasn't moving like a normal aircraft. Well, it was just moving very smoothly, very, very, very smoothly. And as I said, there's a little bit of wind around, but I don't know about it, if there was much at 100 meters high, but it was moving. There was no sort of apparent sound that we could hear at that time. It wasn't moving with any kind of, turbulent motion. It was nice and smooth. It had the light coming out, and he's watching it as close. And I almost could hear his heart beating as it got closer and closer and closer and closer. And I said, here it comes. It's coming close. It's only, it's only about, a couple of 100 meters away. And then he suddenly dropped to his knees and started crying. And he said, don't take me, don't let him abduct me, don't let him abduct me, don't let him stick that thing in my backside, don't let him do anything to my backside, please don't. And he started bawling. And as it got right on top of us, we could hear that sound. It was a helicopter. It was a helicopter. And the helicopter flies over, and the torch must have been searching the banks or something, because we didn't have a police helicopter at that time, so I don't know what it was doing there. But it was there, and then this guy gets up, and as the light comes over, he puts his knees, he falls to the ground. He's already on the ground. He's got his head tucked between his knees. He's got his hand over his ears. He goes, don't let him touch me. He's just screaming, don't let him take me. Don't let him touch me. Don't let him take me. And I'm just standing there looking at him, looking up, and I'm going, what am I doing here? And as it passed over, he sat there for probably another 30 seconds after it well and truly passed over. The chopper had passed over and had gone. And I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, it's okay, it's gone. The helicopter's passed. You can get up now. And he gets up all embarrassed, looking at himself, trying to be staunch. He goes, yeah, I knew it was a helicopter. I just wanted to see your reaction. Right, buddy. Right. Pack up and go home. He just would. And then all the way back, he was saying, I knew it was a helicopter. I knew it was a helicopter. I knew exactly what it was. No, you didn't. Okay. That fear was real. That fear was absolutely 100% real. But, these trolls, that are out there, the naysayers, hit me up. Don't believe in Yowies? I'll take you to where Yowies are. You don't believe in UFOs? I know a couple of old hotspots that might still have something going. People, this is the other thing trolls don't realize. It's not a party trick. No. They're not on demand. I can't turn up to a place and yell out and expect Yowies to turn up.
That's one of the things I said. Yeah, I said that in one of the replying to one of the comments today, because I actually thought about you when I heard one person talking. They live on a farm, and they said that the Yowies are always around there, and they've almost kind of got a relationship with them, as in they'll come in close, but they don't interact as such, but there's no fear there between the people on this farm and the Yowies that are in the local area, and they leave fruit out for them, and these things take the fruit. And it reminded me of what you had to say when we were having that conversation. I think it was about overripe mangoes or things like that.
Overripe
that
fruit.
Sort of
they like the fermented sugar content in the fruit when it ferments, when it's just a bit overripe. What did they say? What state they were in?
I think it was Queensland. I could be wrong. There's a lot. If you go through all of the comments on that particular video, you will find it in there somewhere. But like I said, I've been replying to a lot of the comments because a lot of them have been really good. And again, what you were just saying there about that they're not on demand, that's exactly the same with paranormal investigation. When we go out doing a ghost investigation, we say to everybody up front, don't expect to be scared out of your wits, because it's not like what you see on TV. It's not all excitement. It can be a very boring, very laborious kind of setup where you're doing a lot of nothing. And when something does happen, you take it for what it is. I said that they're not, they haven't got the same playbook that we have. You know, they don't come and perform on demand or anything like that. If it happens, it happens. And I actually said to this guy, I said, you know, you say this guy's full of shit. I said, one day when you have your experience and realize that it's not all shit, I said, come back and say hello and I'll bring you on the show.
You know, the great Whitley Strieber said that when he was talking about an abduction experience, but I like to place this on anything, any kind of significant paranormal event that a person may have. And he's in Communion, the book, his famous book, Communion, that he wrote, he says that when you have an experience, it can either be like a golden door to enlightenment, to understanding, to possibilities of other forms of life in the universe or other levels of existence, or it can be a living hell which you cannot escape from.
Yes.
So when you have a genuine experience, the choice, you know, I guess is how it assimilates in your mind, whether or not it rocks your paradigm. One thing I do know, I took a guy once, a guy I've known for many years, and he was interested in Yowies, and we went up to the Sunshine Coast, and we found these giant grass beds. Now, and these beds feature heavily in the book I'm working on, which is called Undiscovered, in terms of about Yowies that I've been working on for over a year. And we found these grass beds, and where they are and where they're located, it could not have ever been possibly made by a kangaroo. It's just been ruled out by scientists, and it just can't possibly have been made by a kangaroo. It had to be made by a large body that patted it all down and used it as either a sleeping or a hunting spot, because they were next to game trails deep into the bush. So he found this thing, and then we were going along through another section, and this is when we had a significant sighting back in 2012 up on this place in the Sunshine Coast up near Coochin Creek. And any Queenslanders who are into Yowies will know the stories of Coochin Creek and will know that I worked that area very heavily for about 10 years. And we go there, and there's a particular part where you can go, and if you crawl up, it takes you to like the edge of a cliff. And if you look down about 10, 15 feet below, there's a trail that runs along the river. And because we heard like a twig snapping and scratching and scraping, and we crawl up and we see a Yowie sitting with its back towards us on the edge of the river. And it was in summer, and its feet were in it, and then it heard us, and then it got up and it absolutely bolted. It just took off up the upper reaches of the river. It parkoured over logs, over stumps, and it just was moving so fast, just like a champion parkourer. And that's exactly how it went. And then
How close did you get?
We were 5 meters, broad daylight.
Wow.
But we only ever saw its back. Right? We only ever saw its back. It looked like an ape. It looked like not a silverback. It looked like a very large chimpanzee from the back that ran like a man, but faster than a man. And this thing just took off. Now, then we recorded a few minutes later. We're standing there, talking about what happened. He's blown away, going, oh, shit, because he never actually expected to see anything. And that's the thing about this sort of thing. You never know when it's going to happen. They say, why don't you take photos? Well, you never know. You can't. It's not like they're going to pose for you, You just never know when these things are going to happen. And this was 2012, and digital camera technology was nowhere near as good as what it is now, with 4K GoPros and action cams and things like that.
Yeah.
And next time I go back out, I've just actually got a new action cam, and I am going to put it on some sort of hat where I can, record everything I see. And anyway, so we're standing there for a few minutes talking about it, blown away. And then we hear from probably around about 150 meters away, we hear this big howl. Whoa, big roaring howl. Well, actually, no, it wasn't a roaring howl. It was this very weird sound. It'd be very hard to describe, like something along those lines. The video of it is on a YouTube channel called Ants Jet. If you can find the video on AntsJet, there was a friend of mine who put it on his YouTube before I had my own YouTube page, and I've never been able to find the original because it's on a corrupted hard drive that I've got. Anyone in data recovery in Brisbane can do me a solid. I would be forever appreciated, because I've got so much data from my original Yowie investigations on that hard drive, and I cannot get it off. But we heard this, and we recorded the hell. We got it, and you got our reactions instantly when we recorded it. And for the rest of the day, this is a guy that would never, rarely ever shut up. But for the rest of the day and for the next 2 days, he was silent. He had nothing to say, and he wouldn't even return my calls for 2 days. And then about a week later, he called me and he said, "I'm sorry, I had to process this because I just couldn't believe what I saw and what I heard." And that is exactly the response that a lot of people for the very first time get. And it challenged his paradigm. It challenged exactly what he thought was the norm, what he thought was science, what he thought was, what was normal. He didn't actually really expect to see anything, let alone hear anything. He didn't expect to have an encounter. He didn't expect to have an encounter with a being that's not human, not Homo sapien, at least anyway. And that rocked his world, so to speak, in a simple term. And he didn't know what to say. He had nothing to come back from.
Yeah. It's funny you talked about that, because when you mentioned about people saying, "Well, did you get the photo?" And you go, you're in the moment. I've got a perfect example of that from when my team were investigating Fremantle Prison here in WA. We were the first paranormal team actually invited in to do a full investigation, and we actually had a security guard with us for the night, because obviously certain parts got locked down after a certain time and stuff like that. So this was a February night, so it was hot, and it was probably 2:00 in the morning. We decided to have a bit of a break, because this is a big limestone block we were actually building. We were actually set up in Division 4, which is the lifers wing, where all the murderers and rapists and everybody went. And it was just my team and the security guard. So what happened was we all sat outside for a bit of a breather, 2:00 in the morning, and just looking around and talking crap for 15, 20 minutes before we went back in, when I noticed there was a silhouette of a man pacing back and forwards in the guard tower. Now, if you know Fremantle Prison, you can't actually access that from the main prison complex, because the guard tower, this particular one, was over the visitor centre, which was even locked off to us. So I said to the security guard, I said, "Have you got anybody else working security tonight?" And he went, "No." And I said, "Well, who's that up in the tower?" And then all of us that were outside were looking, and we were all watching this person pacing backwards and forwards. And I don't want to sound racist, but this was he was an African bloke. I think he went whiter than me when he saw this. And it was only at that point that after probably watching it for maybe 2 minutes, I said, "Has anybody got a camera for this? Because I'm not looking away. I'm watching this thing. Can somebody go get a camera?" And then for some reason, we all went looking for a camera. When we came back, it was gone. But, it does happen, even in this day and age. So what we do now is we have body cams that we will wear, and they're not that good a quality, but we're hoping they might catch something in those moments when we don't have anything else going. And to follow up on that, when I went back to provide our findings to the prison board, the people that actually they're part of the heritage thing, that run the prison, they said, "We'd love you to come back in again, but can you not point things out to the security guard?" And I said, "Why is that?" So, "Well, we lost that guy. He handed in his notice the next day."
See, again, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Speaking of things appearing and disappearing, have you ever had anybody that saw something? Let's say you had two people in one spot. One person saw something and the person next to them saw nothing, or saw what they thought was a person, and the other person saw nothing. Let me go that, because I'll come back to this other point. But have you had anything like that ever happen? Because I've got a story about that I learnt this week. But you tell me,
not really viewing, but we were doing a paranormal investigation one evening, and what we did was we started seeing how the spirits would react to different dynamics, because there was a few of us in the group. So we would do, the guys go in by themselves, the girls would go in by themselves, then we would have mixed groups go in, like a couple of boys, a couple of girls, and then mix it all up, and some would be pretty over the top and some would be very subdued, just to see which kind of behavior would get a response. Now, when the two girls were in there, they both took their voice recorders in, both had record down, both recording the exact same time, recording the exact same speech. But when they played them back side by side, one of them had an EVP response of a female screaming, very loud scream that was picked up. But the other one that was recording it at the exact same time picked up nothing.
My God, that's it. Well, I'll tell you this, what I learned this week. I have a very close, in fact, one of the closest people in my life, a dear friend. Her and her son every year go to Japan for a holiday. They do nothing else all year. They save up all money and every year go to Japan for 3-4 weeks. And
nice.
In fact, they're about to go this Sunday again for another 3 weeks. This happened, I think, last year or the year before. She was telling me this week that, that forest they call is it Suicide Forest?
Yes.
Suicide Forest?
Yes.
And apparently near
just
Suicide,
at the bottom of Mount Fuji.
Yeah. So, and apparently near the Suicide Forest there's these caves, and there's something, I don't know, there's something in the caves like glowworm. I don't know if they're glowworms or glow mushrooms or there's something in the cave. Anyway, they have a guide that they hire every time they go there, and he's a very spiritual sort of Japanese local. And anyway, they've walked through the forest and they've seen all the the notes and all the the remembrance things there, and they were walking down to this cave, and he goes, come on, we'll have a look at this cave. And I can't remember the significance of the cave, so if anyone knows that significance, I'd love to know what it is, just to jog my memory. And she goes, look, I'm not going in the cave. She doesn't like caves, and she goes, I'm not doing the cave. And anyway, so they said, okay, we're going to go and have a bit of a look. She sort of walked a little bit in, and she goes, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to wait at the entrance. And she said she saw a couple and a kid walk up, and they walked up to the front of the cave, had a look around, and were standing there looking around, just completely ignoring her, walking very close to her to the point that she thought they were going to knock her over. And they're just going around looking everywhere, through the cave. They walk through the cave and then they walk back out. And she saw them walk in and walk around and then walk back out, straight past her son and the guide and walk back out. And as her son comes back out, there's people are still standing there. And then they walk off, and he's looking directly at them. And she says, geez, they were rude. And he goes, who? She goes, the people that were just here. And he goes, who people? What people? She goes, the couple and the kid that was just there. And then the guide comes out, and she said, no, he goes, no, they actually weren't really here. And he said, they said, what do you mean? And he goes, they were spirits. And so he said, I've encountered many spirits here. But it's interestingly, like, she saw them, he's standing right next to her, he sees nothing. But to her, they were as solid as real people.
Oh yes, I've had a case like that. I've had one like that.
Yeah, and I thought that was fascinating because
there was a long while back. I think I've mentioned it to you before. A long while back, we actually investigated. This was when it was still closed off to the public. A building called the Old Perth Treasury Building, and it's right opposite the Supreme Court, which we've also investigated. And to get access to the building, the guy with the keys from the Perth Council had to meet me there early in the afternoon. Well, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He couldn't leave me the keys, but what he did was he took me in because he had to disarm the alarm and things like that. And then he wrote me down instructions on how to rearm the alarm when we left. And then we were left to it all by ourselves. But I had to stay in the building until the rest of my team arrived at about 7 o'clock. So I was in this building, which is the quarter of a city block by four stories above ground and 2 stories below ground. I had the whole place to myself for about 3 hours, 4 hours. So I went investigating, and literally big bangs and all sorts of weird things. I walked past this one room, and it was this big, massive smash. And I go, what the hell was that? It sounded like, in an empty sort of concrete room, and one of those old pallets goes down, and it makes that big slap on the ground, and it's really loud.
Big clang.
That's how loud it was. Yeah. I went in there. There was nobody there. There was no pallet. There was nothing that could even make a noise like that. So I go, okay, we're already off to a bloody cracker start here. This was before anybody else rolled up. But getting to what you were just saying then, a bit later on, when the team guys were all arriving, once the last person was there, I took them from a tour. I would walk them around the whole place before I split everybody off into different groups, because we broke off into about 3 or 4 groups of 2 or 3 people each, and they had a floor to themselves easy, you know what I mean? So plenty of room where they weren't going to interfere with each other's investigation. But while we were walking back as a group, I was leading back to the room where we'd set up our base station, and the girl behind me actually went, she sort of, what? This sort of yelled back in shock, and we all sort of turned around. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, a guy just walked out of that room right in front of me, right behind you, as in me, walked right behind me and in front of her, because she was behind me.
Wow.
I said, you're joking, right? I said, there's no one there. She said he had a red T-shirt on, he had jeans. She goes, they were a bit scraggly, but he was definitely there. And he turned around.
He was solid? He
walked in. He was solid as you or I would be in a room. Yeah, 100% solid. But what happened was he sort of walked out in front of her and then turned to walk behind me as if he was joining in the group. And then when she jumped back and we turned around, he disappeared in that split second where she couldn't see what happened. He was just gone. We never saw anything, but she saw it clear as day. And she said he was as solid as any other person.
Do you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the old Telly Savalas story. You remember who Telly Savalas was? Kojak, right, exactly, Kojak. And this story, did you ever hear this Telly Savalas? No? The story goes that a New York cab driver one night pulled up, and this just man hopped in. And he looked at it and he realized it was Telly Savalas. And they're driving along, and he said, where do you want to go? He said, just drive up here, drive there. It was a little bit of a drive. And he had him in the car for maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And Telly Savalas asking him all about his family, how you doing with your family, how's work, how's business, da-da-da. Yeah, good. Anyway, they pull up at the destination, and I can't remember what he said the destination was. And he pulled up at the destination, and he said, how much do I owe you? And he goes, oh, no, Mr. Savalas, I don't want your money. No, I don't want your money. He says, you sure? He said, yeah. He says, all right, thank you. And he gave him the, who loves your baby look, that saying, he says. And he gets out, and he gets out of the car, and it's actually raining, and he's got because he had a hat and a coat on, and it was raining, and he gets back out and goes off in the rain. Then literally 2 seconds later, the cab driver turns the radio back on, and it's the news, and it's breaking news that the actor Telly Savalas had died. Telly Savalas, according to reports, had died a couple of hours before that, before Telly Savalas got into his cab. And the guy remained, he swore black and blue. No mistake. That was Telly Savalas. So you've never heard that story?
Well, I can tell you, no, but I can tell you a very similar story that is very close to my family, and it's not really public knowledge.
Well, soon
my first wife, it will be. My first wife, she had grandparents, and her granddad used to be a sailor. He used to race the boats on the Swan River, and quite often he would be out while the kids, as in my ex's grandparents or grandmother, were at home alone. And she was the oldest of the family. And what happened was, apparently this one day they were out on the Swan, and something happened, and he was knocked overboard. And he was a really, really good swimmer. So he was a good, strong swimmer, and he was sort of treading water, and he just laughed at them and said, yeah, turn around, bring it back. And they put the sailing boat into a turn. I don't know what the nautical term for it is, but they turned the boat around anyway. And when they got back, he was nowhere to be seen.
Wow.
And they searched for him, and they never found him. And they had to go back and tell his kids because the mother was already gone, I believe, at that stage.
Yeah.
And tell kids that the dad was gone. And of course, they were all, well, she wanted to keep it from the younger ones, and she was really upset. Anyway, it got to the night time and the searches were still on and no one had seen him. And then she heard this footsteps in the corridor, to her bedroom. And then her bedroom door opened and the dad walked in and she went, oh, thank God. She goes, I'm glad, she goes, they've been worried. She goes, what happened? Did you swim ashore somewhere like that? And he didn't say a word. He just looked at her and smiled at her lovingly. And she sort of jumped out of bed to go and give him a hug. And as she went to go give him a hug, he just faded up through the ceiling and gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is the most skeptical family out there. And that's why this doesn't get put out there very often. And I'm sorry, but I haven't named any names. So, you know what I mean? But
well, I had the same thing. I had the same thing happen at my house when my father died. I was at school. My mother and father were separated. It was very acrimonious between them. And my mother was sitting at home watching TV. My father rocks up and appears in the hallway between the kitchen and the lounge room. My mother says, "What the bloody hell are you doing here? Get, F and get out. Don't you come back. You're not allowed to be here. F and get out." And he says, "I just want to say I'm sorry." And then he walked away, and then Mum followed him out to make sure he left, and there was no trace of him. 20 minutes later, she gets a phone call. My father had been killed in a car accident an hour before. So I don't know how they do. They find a way to reach out. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it. Maybe someone else can tell us what they reckon. But these things are, like we talked about the witness reports before and the multitude of witness reports. The evidence, the witness testimony is overwhelming.
It is. And I can tell you one final thing for that. His body was never found. Even to this day. He's never turned up. He just disappeared in the middle of the Swan River and has never been seen or heard from since.
The funny thing is I've noticed a lot about this paranormal work, right? Particularly the ghost hunting stuff, that they think what they see in TV shows works in real life.
No.
Supernatural, the TV show. One of my favorite shows to watch, certainly the most favorite show of my oldest daughter, who's just about to turn 33. But they think the law, that's discussed in those movies is real,
No. When you see the brothers, and don't get me wrong, there's always somebody who's Team Sam or Team Dean. And there you go. In the comments, tell us if you're Team Sam or
Team Sam or Team.
Let us know that in the comments. My wife is definitely Team Dean.
No, well, if we're being fair about Supernatural, in the last few seasons, they had the other guy, the angel.
Castiel.
So are you Team Dean, Team Sam, or Team Castiel?
Or you could even be in my daughter's camp, and that's Team Crowley.
Oh, really?
She thinks he's awesome. Yeah, she just thinks he's an awesome character, and everything. But anyway, getting back to where I was going with that is they've got their little device that they turn on. It makes the screechy noises and it's got all the lights. That's based off an EMF meter. So they are using very basic paranormal techniques in what they look for. But obviously it's a fleeting glance of that where it makes a funny noise and then that's it. Yeah. And then they're off to the other stuff. And yeah, it's entertainment. It's not hardcore. I think it's funny when you watch those ones where they come across the ghost hunters, the episodes where they bump into ghost hunters, because while everybody's not usually as geeky as what they make them look in the show, a lot of the stuff that they do is actually some of the stuff that we might do in an investigation. If anybody watches things like Ghost Adventures and shows like that, that is not how a proper paranormal investigation goes. That is just pure entertainment. Yes, they use the different devices that we use and things like that, but it's just not. You don't go running, gunning. You don't go provoke. Well, I think we've used provocation a few times, depending on the location. If you go into a prison, you would use a little bit of provocation to get a response out of them. But if you go and do, say, a haunted orphanage or a haunted school. You wouldn't. You have to tailor your paranormal investigation technique to suit the case.
Yeah, I didn't even know about. I didn't even think, well, let's that would be a good thing. Let's debunk supernatural TV shows, debunk the lore behind them, because I've never heard until this show of using salt to stop an entity from getting to you.
Yeah, that's old.
What? So salt's a thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know that
rock salt traditionally.
I know that they say to take someone's energy off an object, like a piece of jewelry or something. You've got to bury it in salt for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And then have it re-blessed or something. But
yeah.
Okay, so salt's a thing, because I didn't think salt was a thing.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. And what about how they break into graveyards to burn the remains of people so that they're not attached to the so they can break the tether and go off to wherever they go to.
Yeah, that's not one that I would.
And I don't think God's a fiction writer.
Yeah, I wouldn't specifically go doing things like that. That's not something that I've heard of as such. But the rock salt is definitely a thing. It's got a lot of cleansing properties and this, that, and the other.
Okay.
So what they say is if you've got issues in a house, you run a line of salt across all of your windowsills and across all of your doorways, and you can put certain medallions in the four corners, and these things will
toward the place.
There's a lot of different things that come into play depending on superstitions and where you might be in the world.
See, being a Catholic, as we spoke about the other episode, being a Catholic, you just get a priest to come and bless the house, and then you have a few crucifixes in the house, but you get a priest to bless the house. Like salt is like some sort of spirit rid that keeps it out, like you lay ant rid around the outside of your house. Is it the same sort of thing? The salt?
Well, not really. A line of salt is something that they can't cross. So
why?
If I'm not sure of the theory behind it all, but the issue is if you salt your boundary lines and things like that while the spirit is still inside, you've actually trapped it inside.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
You have to make sure it's on the other side of the line of salt.
And how do you do that?
Now, that takes me back, bringing it back to Australia and everything. We did an investigation. We were called to help a family out in, I can't remember what the suburb was now. It was just north of Perth. It was two ladies that were living together, and they had the kid. There was a kid. One of them had a kid who was maybe 3 or 4 years old, and they were starting to have a lot of weird activity happening in the house, and they were getting quite nervous. And then what happened was they would find doors open and things like that, and they knew that they were locked. So what they would do is they would deadbolt everything and all these different locks. And what they were worried about is that the backyard, which had the sliding door out the back, there was a swimming pool, and there was a child fence there and everything, so it was all good. But they put the little fella to sleep one night, and then they heard a lot of commotion out, and they heard this kid crying, but it was coming from outside. So they checked on him. No, he wasn't in his room. They went out the back, and he was outside the sliding door, which had the deadbolt into the floor and a deadbolt into the ceiling, into the top of the frame. They had both been undone. He was outside in the pool area on the other side of the fence, and the fence was still latched.
See, it's my understanding is that spirits do not have the ability to interact with this plane anymore.
No, that's demons. It's not spirits. Now, anyway, to move forward from there, we went in and we did a preliminary investigation, and one of the things that I do recall absolutely 100% vividly is that it had this glory, and I'm using this word very, very, very properly.
Cautiously?
This glorious lemon tree that was absolutely magnificent. I mean, these big yellow lemons, sorry, not orange tree, lemon tree, all these big lemons all over it, and it was awesome. They actually said, take a bag. I said, nah, it's all good. Anyway, we picked up enough there that we needed to get a priest in to bless the place. So Father Barry May was he used to be the police chaplain for the West Australian Police Force, and he was one of the only ordained exorcists anywhere in the country. Every week he was travelling over the eastern states to help families out, and then coming back here and doing jobs. But we had him on our speed dial, and I would speak to him quite regularly. So he said, I'll be there the day after tomorrow. So it was 2 days later, and we brought him back. And it's funny because he goes through, we've worked with him on a few different cases, and I've actually been involved in 3 exorcisms, and 2 of them were with Father Barry May to document, not to actually take part, but he wanted them documented on camera. Anyway, 2 days later, he came back and he had his, I can't remember the word that he used, but he had a gifted lady with him. Excuse me. And basically she was a psychic, but he didn't like to use the term psychic because that wasn't religious. Anyway, she definitely picked up that there was something going on there as well, and they did the house clearing. And we did the house clearing. Well, they did the house clearing. We were there for it. And when we went out to the back, when he was doing all of his stuff out in the backyard as well, we heard this almighty commotion. Don't know what it was, but we walked around to the side, basically at the back of the garage is where this lemon tree was, and every lemon on it was on the ground and rotten.
Wow, just like that. 2
days from, these things were glorious. They were just coming into perfect. They should have been on the tree for at least another few weeks. And then to have every single one, even to the top of the tree, every single one of them on the floor and rotten and brown and horrible.
So it's like something sucked the force out of them, sucked the goodness and the force that makes it what it is, sucked it right out of them. Here's a question for you.
Well, you got to remember as well, lemons are very acidic, and acid goes into a lot of batteries and stuff like that to help build up energy and stuff. So I don't know if it's used all the sugar and all of the acidy kind of properties of the lemons to try and fight off the cleansing. But they ended up moving out of that house. It wasn't as bad, but it still didn't completely go. And they moved out, and then they got blessed before they went into the next place, and they haven't had any issues since, but to my knowledge anyway. And I was in contact with them for a couple of years after that.
That brings me to a question for you, and I want your opinion on this. Some people seem to, like me, like you, like other people we know, and we talked about before about having an open mind, and if you go out there and look for it and have an open mind, you'll find these things. But in relation to spirits or just high strangeness as a whole, do you think it is the person, the experiencer that is the attractant, or is it the place, the house that is attractant? Say, for example, in my case, growing up in a house that was haunted, that we believed it was the house, right? And we had the house blessed, and once we did have it blessed properly, everything stopped, more or less. But all the really bad stuff through the 70s, through the mid to late 70s and early 80s, that all stopped. And then we only had one more incident, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, which we heard some disembodied voices from relatives who had passed. But, so the question is, I theorize that sometimes some people, I mean, no matter what I've experienced in my life in terms of high strangeness or what you have, I know for a fact I've met people that have experienced far, far, far more. So is it the people? And I call these people magnets, right? They just attract this sort of high strangeness. My ex-wife used to say to me, she says, why is all this crap happening to you? I said, well, at least it's not boring, But is it the house? I was just going to say, is it the house or is it the person that attracts them? Because there are suggestions that some houses act like portals. Or just that may be the energy of the house that just attracts all this activity, or is it the person that attracts the activity?
Well, let me break some of this down. There's no one explanation for a haunting. You have a lot. Well, because I've been doing this for over 45 years. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've formulated my own theories on a lot of it. Now, I break it down into 3 or 4 different categories. So you've got what they call residual hauntings, which are, you usually find them in older houses and things like that. So I'm talking, you know how in a haunted house, when you've got the lightning going on, you'll see the lady walk down the stairs and then they'll disappear through the wall and things like that. Well, if the same thing keeps happening again, what it is, it's basically just a recording. Say something has happened so powerful that it's actually impregnated itself into the walls, much like we used to go and listen to the top 40 on a Sunday night, and we would use that old magnetic tape to record the, our favorite songs from the radio.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing. It's recorded into the walls, because what you got to remember as well back then is the walls had a lot of heavy leads and heavy metals in the paint.
Yes.
So that can act very similar to a magnetic tape. But what happens is, and this is why residual hauntings aren't as big a thing in this day and age, is you wouldn't strip the paint off the walls. What you would do is you'd wallpaper over them, or you'd repaint them. And then eventually it's like a tape, gets worse, it degrades, and then eventually you can't see it.
So hang on.
So that's
are
your
you
first
saying
type
the
of
image
haunting.
is captured in that lead or those metals, or are you saying, because I've heard of something a similar theory, but in like that our reality is like a tape, because we've lived this reality many, 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 many times, perhaps, in order to try and get it right before we can progress on. And so what we
no, not like that. Not like that.
not like
No, it's not like you're reliving your life trying to get it right. No, it's just
no. What I mean
a
is,
recording.
but what I'm saying is that some of the apparitions that some people can see, for some reason, they're seeing maybe after images of a time of a reality before.
Oh yes,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
that's what I was getting
correct.
at. Okay,
Yes, that's residual haunting.
So residual after images from maybe a different reality or the reality before, and for some reason, some people can see it and others can't.
Well, no, it's like because it's not something that we understand, we don't know what the trigger is for it. It's not. We don't know what the play button is to replay that recording. Obviously, something's happened that's impregnated it. Hit the record button in the past, and that's it. So where that person has walked down and walked through the wall, maybe 100 years earlier when it was actually captured, that used to be a door. But you don't see the door; you just see them walking through where it used to be.
Right,
and that's
usually they say
on the residual haunting site.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say I read somewhere that the thing that can imprint or create opportunities to see these things is emotion. The power of emotion, can increase your ability to experience these things, or even for
100%,
or the emotion that happens at the time. Like we hear about places that are haunted where mass murders have happened or serial killings have happened in a house, and because of the emotion, the fear, the scare, the apprehension, the anxiety, all that is such at high levels that it's imprints itself in the time and space of that place, perhaps. I don't know, or creates maybe an anchor that they keep coming back to. So like a video tape, like an after.
So where I'm going with that is, if we can understand what's involved in the recording, we can also work out what's involved in the play mechanism to replay it. So quite often in a lot of those old cases, these things would pop up in the middle of a storm. So you got that lightning and thunder and everything happening outside, and then suddenly the ghost comes down the stairs and goes through the wall.
What storms
create? That then tells you that it's something to do with the amount of energy. Yes, creating energy, which is like hitting that play button. So that's one of those. Then you go into your intelligent hauntings, which are, things that are more interactive, that are actually there now, and, things get moved around. So you're sort of heading into your poltergeist activity and things like that.
Yeah, but when on stormy nights, what you got to remember, and this is the science side of me kicking in, when you have thunderstorms, right? Lightning and thunder storms. Every lightning bolt is like an EMP. It's electromagnetic activity. It's static electricity, and it builds up, and then it's an electromagnetic discharge, right?
Yeah, and then you got moisture in the air, which is a conductor.
Yeah, right. So what we're really doing is, if there's any weakness, say in the time-space fabric or dimensional fabric, that's only going to be amplified by lightning, those lightning and thunder. It's basically going to be like dropping an EMP bomb on that area, which is going to stimulate. It's just putting so much energy we can't see, energy into the atmosphere that's going to stimulate any kind of weakness. And we're seeing that at Skinwalker, aren't we? When they put light energy, electrical energy, rocket energy, kinetic energy, when they put that into those areas at Skinwalker Ranch, they're getting responses. Yep. It's like they're getting closer toward where that boundary between maybe dimensions or time-space exists, you know? So that leaves the question then, so what is beyond this life? What comes next? What's afterwards? What's happening next? And that's what we don't know.
Well, let me go one step further, okay? This is based on an investigation that I did down in Albany in Western Australia. I keep trying to bring it back to Australia, but and these are the cases that I've been specifically personally involved with. And we were investigating the old quarantine station, specifically the isolation hospital right next to the morgue in the old quarantine station. And we were set up one night. This was back in 2012. And we had a psychic with us who was able to run a board session, and I've actually got footage of this. I've actually got video footage of this. Still have it.
Yeah.
And we were trying to bring spirits forward, and the invitation went out and out. Just to paint a little picture, I had my back to some double doors. You go through those double doors, and then there's a little bit of bush where you'd park a couple of cars, and then it's all like trees and stuff. And then maybe 30 meters beyond that, they literally found an old graveyard. It was hidden for nearly 50 years before it got found. And when we invited the spirits to come forward, we've got the tri-field going off and squealing. We had K2 meters, which are EMF meters, starting to spike and light up. The board was going nuts just before these other two started. And then we have on footage the doors being burst open. Now, there were chairs in front of these doors, and the chairs were even pushed out of the way. We have that on video.
Wow.
Now, getting beyond that, what happened next is that we were in communication with a spirit that said it was a nurse at the quarantine station, but the year was 1919 or 1924 or something like that. It was in the early 1900s, and she was talking to us as if we were ghosts. She was hearing our voices and vague images. So, and this was quite a interesting night, because I started looking into, you know how they talk about the Big Bang Theory and how the multiverses are a whole load. They're continually expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting over and over again. That's one of the theories. Well, if you think of every universe in the multiverse as a bubble, because everything's expanding and contracting, there's going to be times when these multiverses are going to, or universes are going to bounce off each other. So,
well, bump into each other, yeah.
Is it technically not possible that sometimes when we're in communication in the right space and we bump into another universe, be it a different time period universe or a different part of the world or a different planet universe, that we are going to get glimpses or very vague communications from these? Because we got very specific information. And when we did do research, the names did come up, and that freaking absolutely gobsmacked us all when we had that. And then you take into account when they talk about, you know, finishing up on that one, but if you take the same theory into your thoughts when you are doing an investigation for Yowies and things like that, because there are a lot of people that say Yowies aren't just a life and blood creature here in our planet. You know what I mean? Some say they're interdimensional and all these different theories and things like that.
Let's not go.
Is it not possible? No. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, just because we have our own concept on what something might be, going back to what you were saying, is we still have to keep an open mind at the possibility. It doesn't mean that we have to say, yes, that's what it's going to be, but we do have to keep an open mind, because when all the facts are out, whatever it's going to be is whatever it's going to be, whether we like it or not.
Well, Tesla once said that past, present, future, and other worlds is only separated by a matter of frequency. And from that, I took him to mean electrical frequency.
Yeah. Yep.
Which would explain then why those frequencies can be weakened around things like thunderstorms, lightning, nuclear bomb detonation. Yeah. And, they say, yes. They say, some high strangeness happens at nuclear detonations, particularly with UAPs. But I think I answered this question in one of our other podcasts about this, the high strangeness surrounding Yowies. And I think I said that to you in the last podcast, not the last podcast, but one of the other ones we did, which is what I think is that there's two things. I think that there is proper flesh and blood Yowies out there. And I think there's something else out there.
So do I.
That's either spiritual or technological that is not a Yowie.
Yes.
And that runs interference in the same way that Greenpeace runs interference from Japanese whalers or any whalers. They run, because notice Greenpeace, they run harassment programs, harassment techniques to drive those hunters away from those whales. And I think whatever this other force out there with the Yowies is there to protect them or to keep them to themselves, but either way,
I wouldn't.
But either way, they're out there to mislead you. They're out there to harass you and to put you off the scent, so to speak. And I think whatever that is, I'm not saying, I don't know if it's spiritual and I do not know if it's technological. We've had reports of technological things occurring in Australia and all over the world. And we've had reports of what perceived to be spiritual things as well. But if you went back in time to, say, I don't know, to Australia, say 600, 700 years ago, and you had guns, right? And you demonstrated these guns that just made a big, like a shotgun, big boom, and they would call them what? Boomsticks, fire sticks, or kill sticks, or something.
Yeah.
But to them, they don't understand the indigenous people of 700 years ago may not understand technologically that's a gun. They just know it looks like a stick that fires flames, right? So whatever is out there, if it's technological, they obviously think that, hey, if we impersonate these things and scare them or mislead them or take them down somewhere else, they're going to fall for it. And we do. Right, but Yowies themselves, the being, the Yowies, the unclassified Australian hominid, I do not believe are spiritual in any way, shape, or form. Because, as I said before, they do not. If they were spiritual or mystical, they're not going to leave footprints. They're not going to leave fingerprints. They're not going to have a need for food. They're not going to 100%. They're not going to leave physical traces and physical engagement behind. They're not going to allow you to photograph them. And as you know, me and a couple of others have gotten some really, really, really good photos. Again, we go back to the Benfield photo or my tree sitter photo from 2000.
Yeah.
They're just going to, if they're spiritual, they would just be like an apparition. They would be there 1 minute and gone the next. But I can also explain rapid disappearances by camouflage and the use of dead space as a apex ambush hunter, Yeah. You can also seem that way to the uninitiated. And this is what we're talking about, about technology 700 years ago and to now. Most people are not initiated into the techniques and strategies that the primitive hunter-gatherer hominids would engage because it's their livelihood on the line. They would be exceptional at it. But I will admit there has been strange stuff that has happened to me and out there as well. And I do, as I said, I do not believe it is biological. I believe it's either spiritual or technological.
Yeah. And that leads me to my next bit is that, especially with a lot of the reports that are out there, and again, heading back to that report, the show that I did with Barry a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
A lot of people are now talking about their encounters and stuff, and in the comments, which is it's really interesting to go through. It's probably every bit as interesting going through the comments than it is actually listening to the podcast itself. But I think a lot of people are getting into a case of they can't understand what they're seeing.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're just saying it's a Yowie, you know what I mean? Because that's the only thing they can think of. Now, I think we are due to wrap up now because we've been going for a bit of a while. But can I just get you to tell one quick story before we go?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one that you told me in the very first interview when you and your son were out about the breathing down the neck
Nicholas,
thing.
Yeah.
It's just prove how good they are at camouflage.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is, again, as I said earlier in the podcast, that he had an experience, and ever since then he didn't believe, because I think he didn't want to believe. He didn't want to acknowledge that they're real. But there was me and two other researchers. We're near Coochin Creek. We're at this different section. It's the middle of the night. He standing there in his Navy DPNUs, because he was in Navy cadets and he was camo, and a lot of people wear camo. And when we're out, so we're looking over this, like I want to say cliff, but not really a cliff, like an overhang that looks over the river. Now, one of the guys, Nigel, was down to the left, slightly, only about maybe 6 feet away. My friend Anthony was in front of me. I was standing behind Anthony, and Nicholas was standing behind me. And we're sitting there listening around. We can sort of hear some movement around, know what animals, because this is what's important of doing in areas. When you search an area, you've got to know what animals are around. Are there kangaroos? Are there wallabies? Are there pigs? Are there dogs? You got to know what's out there in order to be able to determine and decipher the traces of what we find. And also to know if there's any big animals out there as well, which can also explain noises. And we're standing there and we're just listening. We just listen, and sometimes you act like you're not there. You're a super low impact, and these things don't know you're there, or they forget you're there, or they think you've gone, and then they start acting normally. And if you sit quietly, you can hear lots of amazing stuff. So we're just standing there, middle of the night, so dark you cannot see your hand in front of you. And we're standing there, and I hear my son go, "Oh, jeez," like this for about 5 minutes. And then he goes, "Can you just F and stop it, bro?" Because my son calls everyone bro. And I said, even his mother. And they said, "What are you talking about, Nick?" And he goes, "Oh, mate," he said, "well, you stop breathing down my neck." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're breathing down the back of my neck. Take a step back." And I said, "Mate, I'm standing in front of you."
Yeah.
There was nothing behind him. And then he just quickly jumped forward in front of me. And he goes, "I want to go. Let's get out of here." Something was standing behind him. He's 6'7", and he was 6'7", well, about 6'5" when he was 16. But something was standing behind him, breathing down his neck. I thought it was me, but I'm actually in front of him. My friend's in front of me, and we've got another one to the left who's much shorter than him, so I couldn't have done it.
So this thing was at least 7 foot.
Yeah. And it was breathing right down the back of his neck. So it's not only 7 foot, but it's also like probably only a foot away. But
that's where I think is a good place to probably end this, is that when they want to come in and have a look, they can get very close without you even knowing it.
That was what I was going to say. They can absolutely, they could virtually in the pitch black of night stand right next to you, which they did in my son's case, and you wouldn't even know it.
That, I think it's a good place to end tonight's episode.
Thank you, Mr. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Until next time, take it easy, mate.
Bye, mate. See ya.
Thank you.